Hello and welcome to another episode of the Speak Podcast, the podcast for people with ideas and stories. I am your host for today's episode, Dana Lopez. I am a published speaker myself, but I was also the producer of Speak Heritage, a pop-up event that took place on July 27th, 2023 in Levittown, New York. Today's episode features talks about forgiveness, either forgiveness indirectly or directly. We are so happy to feature our published speakers for this micro-theme of forgiveness. They are Chef Mark Anthony Bynum, Kirstine DeCook, and Jason Greer, who was actually the first speaker for Speak Heritage, the pop-up event that I had the honor of producing. We are so excited to share these incredible talks with you, so we're just going to dive right into it and get to our first speaker.
I'm Fred P. Banning, the builder and co-leader here at Speak. This next talk is from our Speak Beginnings event, November 17th, 2022, by Chef Mark Anthony Bynum, Changing the Recipe. Mark's talk I find to be incredible, as you will soon hear, because he had a preconceived idea, like we all do, about what it takes to be successful. And being the chef, he knows different recipes you put together to get your end goal, your end result. And he took the same idea in life. But as he went along his life, different ingredients, he realized that wasn't working out. And in order for him to get to where he needed to go, he had to change the recipe. And that meant forgiving. That meant letting go of some of the past hurt. That meant taking responsibility. This was an impactful talk. I cannot wait for you all to experience it. Ladies and gentlemen, Chef Mark Anthony Bynum.
A moment of truth comes at a different time for everybody. For me, it was at rock bottom. For me, it was Christmas, the week before Christmas, 2018. 2018 was a rough year for me. Had lost all my businesses, lost my family, lost my home. And as I slept in my car, waiting for my severance check so I can get an apartment, I knew I had to make a change. I knew I had to change the recipe. But I really didn't know how it came, because something that hit me real hard was not really knowing my father from a young age. And that affected me as a man, it affected me as a husband and a father, and affected me as an entrepreneur. And that hit me kind of hard, because I'm about to be 40 years old, and that's a hard pill to swallow when you're about to be that age. And it's just like, okay, it's time to change. So over the years, about 2 or 3, I took some time and I started to work on myself, things that I have forgotten about in life. As a chef, we create recipes to give an expected end. And the only time that you change those recipes is when it's not giving you the end that you wanted. So I had to input ingredients that I had pulled out of those recipes: self-care, therapy, sleep, family time, me time. But the one thing that I really forgot about and I didn't know was forgiveness. Oli Coyote Umatundi. I can say his name now because it doesn't hurt me as much as it used to. It affected my business. It affected how I thought. It affected how I communicated with my children and how I communicated with my employees and other employers. I had to change my recipe. I had to take time for myself, and that's what I did. Transformation defined is a thorough change in form or personality. That came from me after years of work. Father's Day, 2020. I had just dropped off my kids. I was sitting in my house at St. James and, separated now, so I'm sitting there reflecting on the day and how much love I have for my children. And the one thing that I never did was forgive my father, because I never thought about him being broken. And only after I reflected on myself and did the work myself was I able to say, well, maybe he wasn't what he was supposed to be, and that's why I never saw him. Because the love that I have for my kids, nothing could ever keep me away from them. And that was my moment of transformation. That was the time when I was just like, it changed my taste buds. As a chef, I always worked with the best ingredients, but I never gave those ingredients to myself, and I had to change all those things. And the anger that I had wasn't at everybody else. It was at myself, because I put myself in this position. I put myself in a position to not feel. And it's a blur at times when I look over the years about things that I did and the transformation that was created, and it's just beautiful now to see and to feel and to taste. That transformation only exemplified and even created more because now I had that fire to go back and to redo that which was broken. January 15th, 2022. I have a dream, Martin Luther King Day. That's the day that I decided to take my restaurant that has wheels now and open up the Hush Truck again. It's not too many times in life that you could rewrite your script, but it's a recipe, and we always rewrite recipes. We rewrite recipes because ingredients change, formulas change, we change, our taste buds change. And that's what happened to me, because I took the time out and I did the work and I processed it and I changed it, gave it a little bit more fire. And now I can say I have my business back. I just opened up the Pie Hole. It's about a rock throw up the road. It's 850 Main Street. It's a new recipe. And it's things that I never thought I'd be doing before. And the relationship that I have with my children is great. The love that I have for myself is great. And the love that I have for the people is even more. I just want to thank everybody for the appreciation that I now have for myself, because I always knew that it's a cliche, hurt people, and I was hurt. I'm not hurt anymore. Change your recipe. Thank you.
I'm George Andriopoulos, the architect and co-leader here at Speak. That was Chef Mark Anthony Bynum with Changing the Recipe. You know, since this talk, Chef has evolved one more time, transitioning the Pie Hole into a mobile pop-up platform, and he'll be the first one to tell you that nothing that you try in business is ever a failure. You just keep evolving and keep growing. Thank you, Chef, for all that you brought to this talk and for continuing to grow as a human being. Our next Speak Talk for this episode comes from Kirsten DeCook with Mastering the Art of Forgiveness, Confessions of an Unforgiving Soul. This speaker came to us from our channel partner, Trisha Brooke, at the Big Talk, and it was super interesting working with Kirsten and hearing this story. Kirsten had a version of this talk that was written beforehand, and so this was a great example of taking an existing talk and sort of morphing it into a Speak Talk and focusing on the moment of truth, moment of transformation, and moment of impact. I remember sitting down for the first time after she completed her first draft and thinking, this is just about there. I think it needs just another little deeper look into the story so that we can feel what it felt like to be in Kirsten's shoes during this pivotal time in her life that she talks about in this talk. And so I think the audience is going to be on the edge of their seat listening to some of the uncomfortable places that she kind of had to go during this journey in order to master the art of forgiveness. I'm so proud of Kirsten for getting this done and for excelling on our stage. Without further ado, here we go. Kirsten DeCook with Mastering the Art of Forgiveness, Confessions of an Unforgiving Soul.
8 years ago, I danced with my father at my wedding. This was a miracle for me, and it only happened because I set out on a journey to find and master forgiveness. We all experience trauma when people hurt us or do us wrong, and this can make it hard and sometimes impossible to forgive and let go. Yet, without forgiveness, life is governed by the past, the emotional ties to the offender, the inner conflicts caused by resentment, bitterness, and hate. Without forgiveness, we cannot become whole and enjoy the fullness of life. I can attest to that. My father abandoned my mother, sister, and I when I was not even a year old. Growing up without a father was a big challenge, coupled with living in Russian-occupied East Germany, where we could not say or do anything that wasn't approved by the government, and life was marked by scarcity of even the simplest things. Being a Christian in a country that frowned on religion added to our daily struggle, making life all the more difficult. The absence of a father figure affects a lot of decisions you make. I made a lot of bad decisions and essentially paid the price for it. But I managed better than my sister. She was 3 when our father left us, and it crushed her emotionally, which sadly had a trickle-down effect onto her children. Mother and I tried to mitigate, but there's only so much we could do. Auntie, who broke up all contact with her brother, helped as well, so did Grandma and Grandpa. They actually took their grief about their son abandoning us into their grave. I hated my father for all the pain and suffering he inflicted on 4 generations. I hated him with a passion. Hate is a strong word, and I do not take it lightly, but I couldn't help but feel that way. When he had the guts to show up 45 years later, wanting to be part of my life, I was not only dumbfounded, I was pissed. All of a sudden, he recognized I exist, and I was supposed to do what? Forgive him? Life is a precious gift. We only get to live once. I want to live an amazing life, achieve my goals, thrive, and be happy. And it is my passion and purpose to empower others to do the same. To empower and inspire others, you have to live by example. My father showing up hit me over the head with a baseball bat. I had to find a way to forgive him based on my values and what's important to me now, not the past that made me so resentful towards him. And that is why I went on a pilgrimage to find and master forgiveness. When faced with a challenge, I always start with why, as your why is the reason for which you do it. Your why is what moves, drives, and energizes you. It brings meaning to what you do. What does it mean to forgive my father? Why would or should I do it? I had to take a deep dive into my psyche, soul, mind, and spirit. I was shocked to discover that carrying hate with me all these years was the root for me being easily irritated, holding grudges for way too long, and my occasional harsh tone of voice. Those toxic thoughts and emotions towards my father affected my whole being negatively and ultimately prevented me from becoming more of the person I want to be. Kind, loving, compassionate, understanding, open-minded, the list goes on. What a discovery. I had to forgive and let go for my own sake to find inner peace and become the person I want to be. I came to realize that while forgiveness is an act we perform towards others, it is also an act of kindness to ourselves, as we lighten our emotional load and get rid of the baggage that is holding us hostage and is eating away at our chance for emotional freedom, happiness, and success. We can't change what happened, nor do we have to condone it. But we can choose to cleanse our heart and make peace with the past, instead of being enslaved and burdened by it for the rest of our lives. I was ready to make peace, but how? How would I forgive and let go? A very challenging question for someone who is a champion of holding grudges. In my search for an answer, I discovered that forgiveness is not a light switch. You don't just forgive and move on. Forgiveness is a dance that you learn and practice daily, a dance that combines a deep understanding of yourself with courage, perseverance, and a willingness to grow and change, a dance that leads to inner freedom and peace, which alters who you are and how you interact with the world. And it enables you to craft a life that you will love. The dance of forgiveness will look different for each of us. Your dance steps will depend on what it is that you need to forgive and let go, and what it is that you want to be, become, have, overcome, or achieve. What would that be? It took me some time to come up with my own answer. To be more at peace with myself and the world, and to become the person I want to be, I needed to get rid of my negative tendencies that subconsciously fire every time something doesn't go my way. What if I were to pay more attention to those situations? What if I were to be more at choice with my thoughts and actions, live more intentionally, instead of letting my negative tendencies fire whenever they want to? It was worth exploring. I started to think of the necessary then steps that would help me get there. One of them was to agree to meeting my father next time I would visit Germany. My loving, faithful, and forgiving mother arranged a meeting at her house. Just imagine. As expected, it was weird and awkward for a while. At that meeting, my father learned that I was getting married the following year and said it would mean everything to him if he could come. I said, sure, thinking it was part of the forgiveness process. He came and worked his ass off, helping with preparations and cleanup, and he baked us the most amazing wedding cake. It took him 5 days. He used to be a master baker, and we actually had to buy a second fridge to put all the pieces in there. He wanted to show that even though he wasn't there all my life, he now cared to be present, and he treasured the fact that I let him. It gave us a chance to get to know one another and build a relationship we never had. What he did not like was the fact I called him Fredo, as it's not his real name. I made it up. It worked for me. His real name just made me grimace and left a bad taste in my mouth because it reminded me of the past. Calling him Dad wasn't an option either. He would have loved it, but I simply could not bring those words over my lips. Before he flew back to Germany, he invited me and my husband to his 70th birthday party the following year. I said I'd think about it. Having him here at our wedding was one thing. My world, my rules. Going over into his world where I would meet all his friends and my stepsisters was something else. I wasn't interested in any of it. Yet, I intentionally put the birthday party on my calendar and eventually bought myself a ticket. And then, there it was, that voice. That voice from above telling me that going to the party wasn't good enough. I had to go further and deeper to truly forgive and have an honest relationship with my father. Further and deeper, what? I decided to stumble along and deal with the further and deeper whatever it meant. It came to mind that, yes, I had let my father into my life. But no, I never told him how I felt. I just told him to be Fredo, and that was it. He was a new acquaintance. All my decisions so far were made from the head, not from the heart. In order to have an honest relationship with him, I had to accept him as my father and ultimately truly forgive him. I decided to write down all the thoughts and feelings that I carried around with me for all these years prior to meeting him, and I decided there was no better place and time than his birthday party to speak it out loud and let it go. It took me several months to put it in writing, months of self-discovery and months of letting my ego subside. I read out loud in front of all the guests what I had thoughtfully put on paper. It was the only way that I could tell him and the world truly and wholeheartedly that I was ready to move on and let the past be. And at the end of the speech, I gave him my gift, a gift that he could not touch but feel. I called him Dad. At the end of the speech, I looked up and I saw tears, a lot of tears on people's faces, including that of my dad's. He said that was by far the best birthday present he ever gotten in his life. I had built a wall. That wall is down now, just like the Berlin Wall I grew up behind. Both fallen walls have changed my life for the better. Don't let the sun go down under your anger. That's what my grandfather often said. Well, for many years I wasn't able to do this, as holding grudges was one of my specialties. That was then. Today is now, and it looks different. It is amazing. When we choose to act with intention, instead of simply reacting out of habit, we gain control of our life and we're able to shape it the way we want it to be. While we can't always choose the music life plays for us, we can choose how we dance to it. Just imagine what the world would look like if we were all practicing the dance of forgiveness daily. How many more walls could be broken down? How many people could be brought together? How many bridges could be built? Imagine how much peace and freedom this would project into the world. You and I can contribute to the healing of the world by practicing the dance of forgiveness daily. Join me. Thank you.
Wow, what a talk. That was Kirsten DeCook with Mastering the Art of Forgiveness, Confession of an Unforgiven Soul. This was such a powerful talk because it deals with something that we often don't talk about, but we need to talk about, and that's forgiveness, especially when it comes to people who are so near and dear to us. And just experiencing Kirsten share her story and what it took for her to forgive her father. And then there's a moment in the talk where she said, "And I call him Dad." That was such a powerful moment. And it just shows that forgiveness is really not about the other person. It's really about us, about you, the person who's doing the forgiving, because you're truly freeing yourself to go on and to live an unhinged and fulfilling life. So, Kirsten, thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for trusting the Speak platform to steward your story, because this is such a personal story. And we so much appreciate you. And I know that everyone who listens to your talk, who has some type of art with anyone in their life, will be moved and inspired to at least want to try to mend that relationship. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
I am so honored to introduce the now published speaker, Jason Greer, for this episode of Forgiveness. Jason was the very first of 10 speakers for the Speak Heritage event that I was so honored to produce back in July 2023 in Levittown, New York. Having been a speaker before myself for Speak Beginnings, the first pop-up event for Speak, I was so excited to have the opportunity to bring more people to the stage to share their ideas and stories, particularly stories about their backgrounds and heritage and where they came from. Jason was one of the very first speakers I met with on a Zoom call when I was planning my speaker lineup, and his story just touched my heart, and you'll hear why in a moment. But it did so not only because of the experiences that he had to endure in his life, but the journey that he took to find forgiveness in his heart. And it was just so phenomenal and so inspiring. Not only did I have to have him for this event itself, but somewhere along the line, it just became clear that he had to be the first one to kick it off. His background of being a young Black man in a place where he was just not welcome was the overlying theme, but his message of forgiveness, even in the most impossible and hurtful situations, is what I think made Jason the perfect speaker to kick off our event. With his talk, Embracing Forgiveness, Transforming Pain into Strength, here is the incredible Jason Greer.
I hated being Black. I said it. I hated being Black. You see, I got used to people telling me I didn't belong. I got used to people doing the Heil Hitler salute when I would walk by. I got used to people telling me to go back to Africa. And I got used to people calling me an Alabama porch monkey, even though I wasn't from Alabama. And I've been called the N-word so many times that I actually thought about changing my first name to the N-word just to make it easier on people. But what that man did to me on that day is something I will never forget. So imagine you're a teenager and you walk into the gym to lift weights. A car pulls up in front of you, and 4 white men get out of the car, and they're hurling racial slurs at you, the type of stuff that you will never forget to the day you die. And you happen to notice that one of the men is holding an open container with this yellow liquid in the container. Now, it's the summer, so you think maybe it's Gatorade, and you're hoping maybe he'll offer you a sip, right? And in a split second, he throws that open bottle at you, and you are drenched in this yellow liquid. You're humiliated by their laughter. You're humiliated in the fact that you're soaking wet, and all you are overcome by is this sense of this salty, bitter, disgusting taste in your mouth, and you realize he threw urine on you. This man literally pissed on me. Now, folks, you might be wondering where all this is coming from, so let me explain to you. My family was the first family to come to Dubuque, Iowa under the constructive integration plan, whereby they were going to recruit over 100 black families into the city over the course of 10 years. Now, your next thought might be that this was something that happened in the 1950s or the 1960s, but y'all know I'm not that old. Come on now, right? I might not have any hair, but I'm not that old. I'm 49 years old, so roll with me for a second. This actually happened in 1991. I was a senior in high school in St. Louis, Missouri. My mother was a nurse and my father was a grade school principal. And my father's greatest dream was to become an assistant superintendent of a big school system. So in 1991, Dubuque, Iowa came and they recruited my father to be the principal at Irving Elementary School. Now, since I was a senior in high school, there was absolutely no way my parents were going to force me to relocate. So my parents decided that my mom and I would stay in St. Louis, and we would move my father to Dubuque. In August of 1991, we moved my father to the city of Dubuque, Iowa. On his first day as principal, he discovered that not only was he the first, but he was the only African-American employee in the entire school system. He also discovered that there was an active Ku Klux Klan chapter, better known as the KKK, in Dubuque. And when they caught wind of my father being hired as the principal, they decided to make a statement against my father and a statement against the constructive integration plan because they said it was forced integration. So they burned a cross directly across the street from his school. Now, the harassment didn't just stop with my father. You see, it turns out that Klan chapters talk to Klan chapters. And it turned out that there was an active Klan chapter near where my mother and I lived in St. Louis. They found out where we lived. And they came and they broke out the windows in our home. And they spray painted the N-word all over our home. And I cannot tell you how embarrassed I was that I couldn't protect my mother as she was screaming. Because I was a teenage boy and I hid. And I was humiliated by their laughter. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I legitimately felt my innocence slipping away. It wasn't a matter of hours. It wasn't a matter of minutes. It's a matter of seconds. Now, the harassment against my family lasted well after I graduated from high school. But outwardly, I was about as peaceful as you could get. I was smiling. I was happy. Everybody was comfortable in my presence. But I'm going to tell you that inside, I was seething with anger. I was scared to death to connect to people. I wanted to connect so badly. We believe in brutal honesty, so I'm just going to give you my brutal honesty. It wasn't that I was scared to connect with the people. I was scared to connect with white people. Because it wasn't just what the Klan had done to my family, it was also what people in the city of Dubuque had done to my family. I wanted to give myself. I wanted to be open. I wanted to trust, but I was scared to death that somebody was going to hurt me. And so I threw myself into my academics, and I lifted weights you would swear that I was trying to lift the world. I would have people come up to me and they would say, why do you lift so much? And I would give the politically correct answer of, I'm just trying to be healthy. But the reality was that I was scared to death of ever being small. And I'm going to tell you this right now, that these muscles, yeah, y'all can be impressed. These muscles, this body, this ain't about vanity. This body is a trauma response, y'all. That's all it is. You see, trauma manifests itself in multiple ways. But in every way that it manifests, it's our mind and our heart's way of trying to protect us. The way my trauma manifested itself was through anger. Does anybody here know anybody who's angry? Raise your hand. Keep your hand up if you happen to be angry yourself. Here's what I'm going to say to you. Forgive yourself and to forgive that angry person that you know. You show me an angry person, I'm going to show you a hurting person. Because anger is nothing more than calcified hurt. That's all it is. Now, I came to this point where I needed to let this go, but I didn't know how to go about doing it. So I'm going to tell you, I finally found the beautiful thing called therapy. It just took me 20 years to get there. Right? Now, don't judge me. I was raised by Southern black folks. And if you know anything about Southern black folks, they don't believe in taking your business out in the streets. You keep it at home. Right? But through therapy, I was able to identify my anger. I was able to identify my pain. I was able to identify my humiliation. And even though I was in my 40s, I discovered that I was still that teenage boy that was standing there with a mouth full of piss, with tears coming down my eyes, trying to figure out why this world hated me so much simply because I was black. I realized in my healing journey that my first step was that I needed to forgive the Klan for what they did to my family. So I found the KKK's website, and it's a great website, provided you're into white supremacy and stuff like that, right? Right? And I decided to leave them a message. And in the message, I simply said that my name is Jason Greer. I described what they did to my family. And I said, I started out this message because I wanted to forgive you for what you did to my family. But the reality is, I'm going to ask you to forgive me. I'm going to ask you to forgive me for the things I said about you in the media, for the hatred I felt toward you, for the anger I felt toward you. And it's my hope that when and if we ever meet, that we meet as brothers and sisters in love. Sincerely, Jason Greer. Now, I got a response from them 2 days later. Let's just say we're not going to be eating Burger King together anytime soon, right? Because here's what they said to me. Now, you ready for this? Here's what they said. They said it was actually your family that erected those crosses and burned those crosses and then blamed the KKK because you sought media attention, as though we needed that kind of attention. But in the words of my mother, Elaine Greer, whatever. I then sent a letter to the local Dubuque, Iowa newspaper. And in the letter, I described how my family was doing. And I said, I never once said thank you. Because when my family officially moved, when my mother and I moved to join my father in 1992, when we officially moved to the city, people showed up at our door, white people showed up at our door, with cookies, with cakes, with pies, with one central message. We are sorry for what your family went through, but we are so happy to have you here. I never once said thank you to the men, the white men, who drove up and down our cul-de-sac for 6 weeks straight. They didn't ask for food, they didn't ask for gas, they didn't ask for money. They simply wanted to make sure that we were safe. And I never once said thank you to the kids at my father's elementary school who are now adults, grades 1 through 5, and I never once said thank you to their families. Because when the Klan burned those crosses, these white children and their white families legitimately came to my father and banded around my father, and they said, Dr. Greer, the only way they get to you is that they get through us. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you this. People ask me all the time, why did I forgive the Klan? But you got to understand, my forgiveness of the Klan was not about them. Would it have been great if they had said, I'm sorry? Absolutely. Would it be great if they put their pillowcases down and stopped harassing people? Absolutely. But forgiveness is not about the other person. Forgiveness is about me. Now, understand that my life did not change overnight the moment I said, I forgive you. I still deal with anger. I still deal with pain. I still deal with humiliation. I still have nightmares. And there are things that happen in the media that still trigger me in ways that I'm not prepared for. But I'll tell you this. I am no longer stuck in that place of fear, and I'm no longer stuck in that place of anger, because they will never, ever take away my sense of peace. So my message to you is very simple. For those of you here in the audience that might be dealing with hurt, that might be dealing with pain, that might be dealing with trauma that other people put on you, you don't deserve it. And I wish I could tell you that there was some 90-day formula or some magical cure that would help you get through your trauma that much faster, but there's not. But here's what I do know. Every morning you wake up and your feet hit that ground, you are one step closer to healing. Because you deserve peace, you deserve love, you deserve happiness, and you ready for this one? You deserve a radical sense of self-importance so that you know who you are from your head to your toe, and you can stand in the strength of you even when you're staring across at that burning cross. Oh, and by the way, I'm so proud to tell you that my father accomplished his dream and he retired as an assistant superintendent of schools. My mother is still saying whatever to white supremacy as she sips on her tea. And I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, I am so proud and so in love with this beautiful black skin that I'm in. Thank you.
That was Jason Greer with his talk, Embracing Forgiveness, Transforming Pain into Strength. And I have to tell you that to be in the room that night listening to Jason's talk was just an incredibly powerful experience. Later on, when the speakers came out, everybody in the audience wanted to talk to Jason. It didn't matter where they came from or their race or their color or their ethnicity. Every single person was feeling his pain on that stage that night, but also was so inspired and impressed by his journey to forgiveness. So just the way you probably felt listening to it on this podcast, that's how it felt in the room that night. It was electric, it was powerful, it was sad, but as you can see, he turns it around to be able to heal in such a way that is just inspiring to so many. So thank you, Jason, for sharing your story. Well, that will do it for today's episode of the Speak Podcast. We hope you enjoyed these talks, these incredible ideas and stories, and we hope that you'll join us again next week for another episode as 3 more speakers share 1 microphone, 1 stage, and 1 spotlight. I'm Dana Lopez, your host for today's episode, and thank you for listening.